We'll check out this old bird. 1984 Ford F-800. I haven't popped the hood, but I'm pretty sure it's got a Caterpillar 3208 diesel engine. 5-speed with a 2-speed axle, air brakes. It's a single screw with a tag axle back there, or in farmer terms, a cheater axle. Anyway, it's here for a couple of things. He says it has no headlights, no marker lights. Wants me to look at that. And then I guess there's some kind of a big air leak on the firewall. He's having some problems with the parking brake release. I guess sometimes it doesn't want to stay in. So yeah, we'll check that out. Very clean old truck. And even the interior is really clean. This is nicer than the truck I drive every day. What's cool about these old F-800s is this is actually the same cab as the pickup trucks used. It's the same cab as my 95 Ford F-250. I mean, the interior is different, but the actual cab itself is identical. Well, that's not what I expected to see. It is definitely not a Caterpillar. I believe that's a Detroit. So let's see here. Yeah, there's a Detroit reman tag on the valve cover right there. I think this is a 8.2 liter Detroit, known as the fuel pincher. I don't know a whole lot about these engines, other than I don't think they were very good. That's kind of like Detroit's answer to the 3208. Interesting. I don't know if I've ever really worked around one of these before. Pretty wild setup. Pretty clean under here though. It's like the hour meter says 8,000. I could buy that, I guess. Yeah, super clean truck. Check out that air filter setup. Pretty crazy. I don't know if these have unit injectors. I don't see any kind of injection pump. Huh. It's a 4-cycle engine, as far as I know. It's not like a 2-stroke Detroit. Pretty cool. Got a front mount belt driven air compressor there. It's a lot of engine for that little engine bay. Well, you definitely need a ladder to work on this thing. It just has a regular hood like a pickup truck, but the top of the radiator there is about chin high, so you can't do much from the ground. Well, my plan was to come out here and plug in the block heater so I could get the thing started, pull it in the shop, but I decided not to do that. So we're working outside. It's not too bad today though. Sun's out. It's probably, I don't know, right around freezing. So inside here, I removed the dash pad and that kind of trim bezel from the instrument panel. So I want to get the headlight switch out. They had all this junk mounted down here to the bottom. There's some kind of a cable, throttle cable maybe, or something, and some kind of a fuse panel for the air dryer. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that this is just like a little stud here that unthreads from the end of the headlight switch, and then we might be able to fish it out from behind there without taking this whole dash panel apart. At least that's my hope. I'm starting to regret my decision to work on this thing outside. I do not have a wiring diagram for a 1984 Ford F-800, but I poked around on ALLDATA, and I do have a wiring diagram for an 84 Ford F-Series pickup truck, and I'm betting that there's going to be pretty similar. It might even be exactly the same. Usually Ford's pretty good about that. So here's our light switch right here. Looks like it's going to get power on this black and orange wire here. Comes out of a 15 amp fuse, and it also feeds the voltage regulator. So I know the alternator works. That leads me to believe we probably don't have a power feed issue. And it looks like maybe there's another power feed here for the tail lights. Like maybe they have their own power feed. I'm not exactly sure how the actual switch works here, but I think we can poke around in here and find our powers and grounds and go from there. Looks like this red and yellow wire is what goes out to the headlights, and it also goes through the high beam, low beam selector switch. So probably we're going to find our issue here or here. Okay, so here's the headlight switch, and if I'm reading this wiring diagram right, and I like to think I am, should have power here, and we do. That's our black with an orange stripe or yellow stripe or something. And then we should have power here. That's our, what, tan with a white stripe. And I think those hooked to this one here, which is a blue wire. I don't know what that one does. Doesn't matter. And we should have power here. Green with a yellow stripe. That goes out to our door switches. Black with a pink wire. I think that's this one right here. Yep, that one's on right now. If I push the door switch, it should go out, but it doesn't, so that probably doesn't work. Brown, that's this one right here. That's our parking lights. So it should be on when the switch is in either of the two on positions. So that's the first on position. We got nothing. And nothing. Go to the second on position. And there we go, we have parking lights or marker lights. Let me go see if they're on the truck. Yes, they are. Okay, now we should also have power on this red with a yellow stripe. That is our headlights. Goes out to the dimmer switch, and we got nothing. So I think at this point we can say we have a bad headlight switch. So I think we'll go ahead and pop this plug out. Looks like somebody's already broken it for us. This lock tab is already broken off. This one's cracked. We'll see if we can get it out of here without completely destroying it. No promises. Okay. Well, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Great. The green crusties strike again. And the bottom side of the plug doesn't look much better. So I think I'll see if I can get a switch and a pigtail. And I would guess this is mouse damage, rodent damage. I noticed a bunch of crap falling out of here while I was poking around. So let me grab some jumper wires, do some testing here real quick. Okay, if I short this one to this one, oh good, the pins are all popping out too. Should have headlights. And we do. I never even noticed that the plug's bad too, so you know, maybe if there's enough of it that's good here, we can just put a new plug on it, and you know, instead of having to spend $16 for a whole new cord, you can just spend like $8 for a new plug. You know how these farmers are. Yeah, for some reason I now have a couple of viewers who every single video they comment that I'm not wearing gloves. Today's your day, guys. I'm wearing gloves. I've got this test cord that I use for various things, usually checking power supplies, but it'll work for this as long as we don't electrocute ourselves. And it's got a inline fuse holder, so if the heating element's shorted out, we won't burn the thing down. These block heaters are pretty dangerous. I have my own truck actually almost caught on fire one time because the block heater shorted out. Well, it's doing something. Pulling 8 amps. So we'll let that cook for a while. See if we can get her started. Oh, well, that's heating up. Let's check the trap line. Start in the garage. Yeah, there's 1. There's 2. And now the shop. There's 3. There's 4. And 5. Nothing on that one. And nothing on that one. I like these regular old school mouse traps. I use peanut butter on them. These things are junk. They were in the building when I moved in. And I would suggest if you're going to do this, instead of reaching into the old lady's pantry for the good peanut butter, get yourself your own dedicated supply. Well, that's pretty much how she goes in the wintertime around here. My shop's in the middle of nowhere, surrounded on all 4 sides by cornfields. Even though I've got a Maginot line of mouse traps, At best, all it does is slow them down. It's been plugged in for, I don't know, 2 hours or so. Should be good enough. I'm not sure I can keep working on this truck though. It doesn't even leak oil. It's way too nice to be in my shop. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Oh, it hardly even smokes. This is too nice. I'm getting nervous. Oh man. I'm telling you guys, I've worked on trucks that were 5 years old, weren't half as nice as this thing. So we got air pressure. What happens when we push this? Nothing. Works absolutely fine. Okay. Brakes work fine. God, the backup alarm even works. Okay, so it does definitely leak out of that. So I probably just need a new valve, or possibly there's a rebuild kit for this one. Alright, so is this a synchronized transmission or not? I don't know. So we'll find out here. That sounds like a range split to me. Does that give us a higher range? Yeah, definitely. There we go, now I got it. So it's just like some kind of a Road Ranger transmission. Unsynchronized. Alright, let's get it fixed and we'll go for a road test. This thing is pretty cool. Man, this thing is so clean underneath. No rust on the frame at all. And that is not a 2-speed axle, so I was wrong about that. And I'm not sure what transmission this is. Oh, there should be a tag somewhere on here. Yep, there it is. I don't know what that says. Okay, it says RT6610. So I wonder if it's just a straight 10-speed. Well, then what's the other air switch for? I don't know. Okay, moving on. Well, I hear something. What is it? I don't know. Okay. Well, it's down here somewhere. One of those lines, I think, rubbed through. Yeah, there it is, right there. Okay, I think we can fix that. Alright, I got it. This little black plastic line here. Looks like whatever it is, it comes up to this gizmo right here. So what is that? Some kind of a relay valve or something? Okay, all the parts finally came in. So we got a new light switch. I got to figure out how to transfer this rod from the old one to the new one. New pigtail, new brake valve, and a new cord for the block heater. Now what's crazy to me is the economics of this brake valve. So there is a rebuild kit available. It's just a bunch of O-rings and gaskets and maybe a spring or something. Anyway, the rebuild kit is like $17 and no one has it in stock. It's a special order from the manufacturer. It takes over a week to get it. To buy the whole reman valve is $22. No shipping. Had it the next day. And the core charge on this thing is actually more. The core charge is like $34 and the whole valve is $22. So they really want the old one back and they really do not want you to rebuild it yourself. Okay, well it turns out to be really easy to get this lever out. You just push this little button here. Come on. Maybe. Come on. Oh, why'd you put it back in there, dummy? Because you wanted to get it on camera. There we go. Just like that. Done. I'll show you guys how I make up these pigtails. There's lots of ways to skin a cat. Some guys like to solder, some guys like to use the insulated butt connectors, some guys like to use the shrink fit butt connectors, some guys like to use the ones that you heat up and they kind of have some solder built into them. This is what I do. So I start with the shrink tube and I like to use the stuff that has the goo on the inside so that when you heat it up it basically seals the insulation. Anyway, go ahead and put your shrink tube on first because we don't want to forget that. So you can buy the shrink tube that has the stuff on the inside at Harbor Freight. It's actually pretty good. Don't tell anybody I said that, but I do buy it there from time to time. Otherwise, you know, any electrical supply house or a place like, you know, McMaster-Carr or Zorro, you can buy this stuff in long lengths. That's what I usually do. Buy it in like 4-foot lengths. Okay, so I think there's all 18 gauge wires except for this big mamma jamma, which is a 12 gauge. Now, what I like to use are these uninsulated butt connectors. I got a little kit assortment here that has different sizes. So we'll use this big guy for the 12 gauge and these smaller 22 to 18s for the other wires. And then I also have some of these, which they're basically 12 to 10 on one side and 14 to 16 on the other side. And I use these where I have to join, you know, one wire on this side and 2 or 3 wires on the other side. I find that works pretty well. Now there's differing schools of thought on whether or not you're allowed to have multiple wires in a crimp, but I do it all the time and it doesn't hurt anything. But you know, if you're working on aircraft or whatever, maybe that's not allowed. So most of these crimpers have 2 different styles of crimps. This is for the uninsulated and that's for the insulated. And come on. You're going to see there's actually a seam in that butt connector. So the seam needs to go opposite of the little point here. like so. And then when we put it all together, our shrink tube is going to slide up over top of that, and good to go. So another point of controversy, whenever I have stranded wire, which is pretty much every wire in a vehicle, I like to twist the strands before I crimp them. I had an electrician one time tell me I was a complete hack for doing that you never twist the strands. I don't have any idea why not, but that was his opinion. Because my understanding of these crimps is if you do the crimp properly, like you actually crimp it the way that it's supposed to be done, and you have the right amount of compression, the copper is actually supposed to basically deform into a solid. So at that point, I don't know what twisting it would hurt. Okay, I got the pigtail all crimped in. So here's a classic example of how I use those kind of 2-into-1 connectors. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. So there was actually 5 cases where there were 2 wires crimped into the little terminal inside of the plug here. So I also, when I use that, I use 2 pieces of shrink tube. So I use a small one here, and then I cover the whole thing with a big one. And the reason I do that is just in case there's a situation where the shrink tube won't quite shrink far enough. On this side, we don't have a big opening or a gap. Now it doesn't matter really for this because it's an interior application, but if you're working on exterior wiring, especially like trailers and stuff, you just can't be too careful as far as sealing them up. So anyway, we'll shrink that with a heat gun and be done with this job. So we're going to grease this new switch up here with some non-conductive grease, or dielectric grease, whatever you want to call it. Try to keep the mouse pea from ruining the new one right away. So when it comes to dielectric grease, this is the stuff I like to use. This truck light or Grody also makes basically the same thing. You can buy this at Napa or any good auto parts store. I like this style where you can use an acid brush to really wipe it where you want. I don't care for the squeeze tube. I think it just makes a big mess. Come on, baby. There we go. Okay, that's it. And there's our big wad of splices. So like I said, I prefer this method with the uninsulated butt connectors. Solder also works quite well. If you use the insulated or the shrink fit crimp connectors, those work really well, but they tend to get really bulky. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, I'll throw a zip tie on that, and we'll hook the batteries up and see if we got headlights. Man, I really like these battery cables. So regular top post batteries, 3 of them. And then check out this cable. The battery cables just go into a big 3-into-1 splice here. That's nice. Yeah, normally on trucks you have the screw post on the top of the battery, and then they have all these little jumpers that run from one battery to the other, and you just have a normal single battery cable that hooks up to the battery on the end. Okay, we need a game plan for the leaking airline, and I guess the first option would be to make a new one. I figured out where it goes. It goes over to the PTO controls, and it kind of snakes up over top of the steering column and underneath the dash, and it's going to be quite a job to run a new airline. But if we need to, this is what we'll use. It's just 1/8" nylon line. But I think what we're going to do is just put a band-aid on it. So this is a 1/8" push connect union. And it's kind of interesting. I haven't worked on trucks for a long time. When I was learning, to work on trucks, push connect fittings were always a no-no. We used ferrules and compression fittings, and that was it. And I guess times have changed because they now have DOT approved push lock fittings. And actually, if you look at a lot of the newer trucks, they come from the factory with push lock fittings. So yeah, they're They're kind of expensive, but they're very, very quick and easy to work with. So I think the problem is all these wires run through this big hole in the firewall here, and there's no grommet. I don't have one, so we're going to make our own. Show you how I do that. So this is just a piece of 1/4 inch fuel hose, rubber fuel hose. And I went ahead and split it on one side. We're going to use that as a grommet. So I think if I just stick it on there like this. Oh, I gotta crawl up inside here, which I don't want to do. Actually, you know what? This might be easier to do from the inside. Boom, done. These buggers are expensive, but it's a lot easier than running a new Airline. And then I went ahead and finished up the hose grommet here. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah. I'll throw a couple zip ties on that just so things don't rattle around, and we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, that looks good. I went ahead and spaced up and tied up that throttle cable. I think the throttle cable might have been what rubbed through that Airline, not the firewall. But either way, we got a grommet, we got our cables all bundled up there with some zip ties, and we fixed our air leak. Looks good. Well, where do you suppose the block heater is? There's the cord for it. Oh. So that must be some kind of an oil cooler, maybe? I don't know. So I finally found the block heater. It is in quite a place. So up underneath of the fender well here, that's the air compressor, that's the exhaust manifold, that's something, fuel filters maybe, or coolant, or oil cooler, not sure. But there is the block heater and cord way back yonder. So yeah, that'll be fun. I'm going to give it a kind of a half-hearted effort, see if I can get it loose. If I can't get it loose, we'll just put a new end on that cord and let it ride. Well, I tried, but it ain't going to happen. There's no way to get that cord off the block heater without taking the air compressor out, and that's way beyond the scope of this job. So I talked to the customer. He said they don't even really use the block heater. They don't really drive it in the winter, I guess. So he said just throw a new end on it and it'll work for a while. I packed it full of grease, and yeah, eventually it's going to have a new cord, but not today. Okay, we'll call that done and we'll go put the interior back together. Okay, I've installed our new headlight switch in the dash. Everything seems to work fine there. And I installed the new parking brake valve. You reused the old knob. The pin's a little bit loose, so we'll have to maybe come up with something for that, but it seems to work. So I'm going to put the dash all back together. Really not a whole lot to it. You just have to put this, kind of put this bezel piece back over the front of the gauges, and then the dash pad just sits on top, and everything's held together with screws. There are no clips of any kind on this truck, which is the way it should be. Well, there we go. Looks like we were never here. And more importantly, when you pull this little knob, lights come on. let's go for a joyride. At 2200 RPM is kind of a screamer. I've had a lot of comments from European truck drivers. They think these unsynchronized transmissions we use in North America are just barbaric. They can't imagine shifting without a clutch, but the learning curve is pretty steep. But once you get it figured out, there's nothing to it. Each truck has a little bit different, rhythm to how it likes to be shifted, but once you figure out the routine, there's nothing to it. Man, this is a pretty nice truck. I'll have to keep my eye on this one. I better get it back to its owner before J.C. Smith is over here trying to buy it. Alright guys, thanks for watching. It's kind of fun working on something that isn't a total pile of junk.